The Burning Crusade is coming back to Anniversary Realms very soon. We now have all the relevant dates confirmed, and we know there will be just over a 3-week pre-patch starting on January 13th, and then TBC will launch worldwide once again on February 5th. And honestly, there's going to be quite a few changes compared to what you remember. Whether you last played TBC during Classic in 2021 or perhaps all the way back to 2007, there are a lot of alterations to this server which are going to make it a different experience. Some of these changes are huge quality of life improvements, some are going to make the game much easier, and some of them have been carried over from TBC Classic in 2021, and I'm going to be breaking down every single major change. This is going to include changes specific to TBC Anniversary, what's different on Anniversary Realms in general, and what changed during 2021 TBC as well, just for the sake of covering everything. We're talking about things such as raid tuning, attunement systems, arena changes, level boosts, and even updates that just affect these realms in general. So with that said, let's make a start on this. But before we go on, a quick mention from today's sponsor, Ragnarok Online X. If you're one of the 25 million players who grew up with the classic Ragnarok Online IP, Ragnarok Online X brings that world to mobile while staying true to what made those old school mmorpgs work. The standout feature here is the Trading Post, a fully player-driven economy where you can freely trade equipment and even currency. Regular players can farm and earn through the marketplace, while those who want to spend can quickly get the gear that they are after. Beyond that, you're getting 6 major classes with deep advancement paths, Norse mythology inspired zones with social features like photo mode, and a life skills system tied directly to character progression. There's also 5v5 PvP and guild siege battles if that is your thing. The progression system includes a cards mechanic for power growth, dungeons with multiple difficulty tiers, and boss encounters with specific drops and weaknesses to learn. Character customization comes through a pet system, costumes, mounts, and the enhancement, enchanting, and refinement systems that let you build out your character's power over time. There is all this and tons more, so whether you are a newer player or you played Ragnarok back in the day, it will be a great time to jump back in. Ragnarok Online X launches on January 14th with fresh servers, making it new player friendly from the very start. So check out the link down below and get started today. Many thanks to Ragnarok Online X for the sponsor today. Let's get on back to WoW. We'll begin with the changes specific to TBC Anniversary. First up is that Bloodlust and Heroism are raid-wide. This is probably the single biggest mechanical change to raiding on TBC Anniversary. In addition to that, Bloodlust and Heroism will reset on boss kills and wipes. In original TBC and in 2021 TBC for that matter, these abilities only affected your Shaman's party. This led to people swapping around Shamans to try and min-max, or sometimes you didn't have a Shaman in your party at all and you didn't get to play with these buffs, which is just never very fun. Now instead, these buffs will work the way they did from Wrath of the Lich King and beyond, with you just pressing the button and your entire raid gets the buff and you are done. And believe me, Shamans will still be just as popular as ever because their totem buffs are simply still way too good, so I really wouldn't worry about your raid spots as a Shaman. The biggest impact here will actually be chain pulling bosses with Heroism up for every single boss in a row, or just not having to wait around anymore on certain bosses where you're likely to wipe a bit more. If you progress Muro in 2021, you know what I'm talking about. Next is that Terraco node respawn rates in the open world have been increased throughout Terracar Forest. So for those who didn't play TBC or don't remember, Terracone's simply a herb in Outland that's used to craft several very important consumables, most notably for a potion that DPS are going to be chugging, Haste Potion. In 2021, Terracone was way too scarce and it ended up being super expensive to the point where it could feel prohibitive. This change will mean Terracone will be easier to farm, which means that everyone will have better access to consumables, so this should be a good overall change. The arena system is getting some fundamental changes to alter how pretty much the entire thing functions. During original Burning Crusade, teams started at 1500 rating, and you could make new teams whenever you wanted to participate in matches without having to climb all the way back from 0 again. Blizzard have said they want to bring back that teams feeling while still allowing you to play with whoever you want without actually essentially requiring you to form a team. So here's how the new system is going to work. Each character's rating now starts at 1500 instead of 0, which it did back in TBC in 2021. Once per week per character, you can pay gold to reset your rating back to 1500, but only if you're below that threshold. There will also be a varying gold cost per bracket, which is essentially going to mimic the cost that it would have taken for you to form a team in the first place. So essentially they're replicating the old system where you could make a new team for gold if your rating tanked, but because we don't have teams anymore as a concept, you're instead now just resetting your rating. So it's a bit of a workaround to come up with the same result as we had previously. Gear requirements have also changed too. There are no rating requirements to purchase PvP gear for any pieces except shoulders, which require 2000 rating, and weapons, which require 1700. Everything else, you just earn arena points and then you go and buy it. So if you're playing a class or a spec that benefits from arena gear, which a lot of them do in TBC, you're going to have an easier time getting this gear. The overall cost of PvP gear has been lowered as well, making it faster to get geared up in general for PvP. Faction reputation PvP gear will be sold starting with the first arena season, and the set bonuses between different PvP sets have been consolidated so you can mix and match different sets as you gear up and not lose those bonuses. Overall, this should lower the barrier to entry for PvP and TBC, which in my opinion is only ever going to be a good thing. You've still got the chase items such as the shoulders and weapons to strive for, but everyone should have better access to gear. Blizzard is also going to be adding dampening to TBC arenas. So dampening, if you don't know, is simply a stacking debuff that reduces the effect of heals and absorbs on players, and it's there so that matches can't go on forever and ever. If you ever played a 2s game where both DPS die and it's healer versus healer, it's kind of impossible to lose until one person's gear breaks. This has actually happened during TBC Classic, and these games go on for hours and hours. No one really wants to do this again. So for 2s, dampening begins at the 20-minute mark, which is still a pretty hefty number. It starts at 0 and increases by 6% per minute, capping at 100%. For 3s and 5s, dampening is not active by default. Instead, it begins 5 minutes after both teams have fewer players alive than their bracket size. So if you're playing a 3v3 and then 2 minutes into the arena match, it's now a 2v2 as one player on each side has died. 5 minutes after that, dampening will begin. It also increases by 6% per minute, similar to 2s. Overall, this is a positive change, I think, to just make sure that arena games aren't going on forever. Next, let's talk PvE, so raiding and dungeons. What's happening there? So tier 4 raids, Karazhan, Gruul's Lair and Magtheridon's Lair will be released in their post-nerf state, and these raids will be open 2 weeks after launch on February 19th. This will be the first time we've had tier 4 release in its post-nerf state, as it was pre-nerf back in 2021, so it will be easier than what you remember, but all the same it should be a good way to start gearing up your characters and getting prepared for future content. But here's where things get interesting, because although Blizzard initially said that the entirety of TBC was going to be post-nerf, with tier 5 they have expressed that they are considering setting it to pre-nerf instead. So as of right now, the tuning for tier 5 raids, so Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep, has not been finalized. Here Blizzard are listening to community feedback on what people want, and they may end up changing things, or then again it may just all be post-nerf. We don't really know at this point in time. Beyond tier 5, so tier 6, Mount Hyjal and Black Temple and the Sunwell, all of these raids were much less affected by nerfs during TBC. Here's another surprise I wasn't expecting. Blizzard has reverted Heroic Dungeons on the PTR to use their pre-nerf tuning instead of post-nerf. TBC Heroic Dungeons were infamously brutal and unforgiving, full of mobs which could one-shot you, and often having trash packs which were much more difficult than the actual bosses within them. But Blizzard have said they wish to experiment delivering more challenging content during TBC, and feel as though Heroic Dungeons is the place for that more so than tier 4 raids apparently. This is going to create a bit of a strange dynamic, because at least in tier 4 I think the dungeon content is going to be harder than the raid content, which is a little bit strange, but there we go. And you are going to have to do those Heroic Dungeons if you want to attune to raids. So let's talk about attunements next, because things are going to be much more alt friendly here than they were in the past. Every player's first character will be required to become fully attuned to each Heroic Dungeon by hitting the revered reputation with the appropriate faction. But once you've done that on your main character, you can purchase a Bind on Battle.net account key to send to your alts. And your alts only need friendly reputation to use this key, and you get friendly very easily from leveling up and questing. In original original TBC, you had to do this revere grind on every single character, and it was a massive barrier to entry for raiding content. But just having to do 1 to revered and then ults to friendly is going to make this system so much easier to deal with. The raid attunement changes are even more dramatic than the heroic dungeon changes. Every player's first character, similar to dungeons, will be required to become fully attuned for each raiding tier. But once you've done that, that's it. The raid will then be unlocked for all other characters on your Battle.net account. It's a one and done for raid attunements. Get it out the way on your main and then never have to worry about it ever again. This is just another thing which is going to make TBC Anniversary way more ult friendly than the expansion typically is. We've just had news about another major change as well, and this is regarding level 58 character boosts. So the level 58 character boost will be available as a standalone purchase starting on January 13th with the pre-patch launch. Here's the big difference though, because this time around Blood Elf and Draenei characters can use the level 58 character boost on TBC Anniversary. Blizzard did not allow this during TBC Classic in 2021, and you had to level the new races from scratch. Overall, Blizzard have already given us a longer pre-patch, which is 3 weeks instead of the 2 that we got in 2021, but if you're a bit pressed for time, then the boost is going to be an option for you, and it can be used on the new races, so you can get up to speed very easily. Edit mode is being added as a quality of life option for the user interface. For those unfamiliar with this feature, edit mode allows you to rearrange your display from the default layout. You can move around or resize various UI elements. This is a feature that retail's had for a while, and it kind of just replaces the need for several add-ons. So when you get it, have a mess around with it and improve your UI without add-ons. Also in TBC, guild banks will be available from launch instead of you having to wait until a later patch. So that's everything specific to TBC Anniversary. Let's now talk about a few general changes to Anniversary Realms. Anniversary Realms use a mega server structure with extensive layering. Instead of having dozens of smaller servers that we used to, there are now only a handful of massive servers. The amount of players per server is considerably higher than it used to be. We're talking about tens of thousands of players concurrently online on a single server, and when TBC hits, it's gonna be real busy. There is of course upsides and downsides to this depending on how you look at it. It's easier to find people for dungeons, raids, find guilds and so on. There's more people in the open world, but on the downside there can be more layering issues. Perhaps the open world is too busy and you're having difficulty questing or gathering. There is also dual specialization for Anniversary Realms too, and this has been in from the start. You can unlock this at level 40 and it costs 50 gold, so it's something you should absolutely do while you're leveling. There is also a group finder tool on Anniversary Realms as well. So this is not the automated dungeon finder from Wrath of the Lich King where you just press a button and it teleports you to the dungeon. It's pretty much the group finder from retail where you can search for people or list yourself, and overall it's just a better solution than spamming the chat when you're trying to find a group. Last, let's cover a few changes which came in with TBC during 2021, just in case you need a refresher on that, or maybe if you didn't play it. So both Alliance and Horde Paladins will have access to both new seals. You'll learn your own faction's seal while leveling, and the opposite faction's seal at level 70. In original TBC this was faction locked, with Horde Paladins getting Seal of Blood and Alliance got Seal of Vengeance. The perceived problem with this is that Seal of Blood was a lot better when it came to dealing damage, so it felt as though Horde Paladins, when they were playing Retribution, had an unfair advantage. Blizzard decided to change this in TBC Classic of 2021, so both factions will have both new seals now. Drums of Battle are a leatherworking consumable that provides a haste buff. However, now they also provide a debuff too called Tinnitus, which lasts 2 minutes. This prevents you from benefiting from drums again. This was put in the game because originally in TBC, when people were min-maxing way back in 2007 and 8, they would have at least 4 people with leatherworking in their party so they could rotate this buff for 100% uptime. And people are a lot more min-max oriented nowadays, so this was expected to become the meta, and a lot of people didn't really want to have to go leatherworking on a class or spec which didn't make sense for that profession. So Blizzard have added in this debuff, so there's a lot more freedom of professions now in TBC. Blizzard have also added in anti-boost mechanics to the game. When mobs inside dungeons have been in combat for an extended period of time, they will eventually become immune to movement impairing effects, then roots, and then finally gain movement speed. On top of that, if there's a large level discrepancy between multiple party members within a dungeon, experience gained is reduced. So if you're planning to boost characters in-game, that may not really be an option for you anymore. So when you take a step back and look at all these changes, you realize that actually there is a lot of them them. TBC Anniversary is simply the most accessible version of the Burning Crusade that has ever existed by an enormous margin. You have post-nerf tier 4 raids, you've got raid-wide heroism on every poll, you're gonna be able to get consumables fairly cheap, you've only got to do account-wide achievements once, and you can buy level 58 boost if you don't have time to level things up. Then again, we are getting pre-nerf dungeons as well as uncertainty around tier 5 and beyond. There are still a few questions surrounding TBC Anniversary which Blizzard will have to answer in due course, but all this information should give you a pretty solid picture of what exactly has changed. Again, the launch date will be February 5th worldwide, and tier 4 will be opening 2 weeks after that on February 19th, so you'll have a good amount of time to still get all your leveling done and the achievements before raids open. Either way, that's just about all the news I have for TBC at the moment, so let me know your thoughts on everything, and as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.